Good morning. Welcome into Five Clubs here on Golf Channel. Great to have you with us. You can also listen. That is Channel 92 on Sirius XM's PGA Tour Radio. For the next hour, we've got a lot to discuss. Looking forward to having Taylor Zarzour join me in studio. Also somebody who punched his ticket into the United States Open Championship. And if you consider his path and what he did after he qualified last night, that is why yesterday is what yesterday was. All right, our program always brought to you by Century Insurance, right by you. They've got a great relationship with the United States Golf Association, not to mention the First Tee. And of course, they sponsor the first event of the calendar year on the PGA Tour. Peter Millar, everything that I wear and have always worn for 15 years, it is Peter Millar, Golf Pride. When it comes to grips, it doesn't matter whether you're an 18.6 or a +8. More players trust Golf Pride in all of their grips and all of their options more than any other grip company in the world. And of course, it is that time of the year where you're thinking, you know, we should probably do a trip before the end of the summer. Or how about this fall? You know, they have new cottages at Pinehurst on Pinehurst number 8 and the new clubhouse at Pinehurst number 10, and they're breaking ground at Pinehurst number 11. That's why it's the cradle of American golf. So book your trip. There's always a good reason and a good time to be at Pinehurst. Yesterday, we kind of set up in our own modest way golf's longest day / greatest day. It ain't over because it was so much fun, and I hated the fact that they had what they had down in South Florida. But I can tell you, having lived in Central Florida for 10 years, from May 1st to about October 1st, you might as well live in Malaysia. It's going to rain every day. You can count on it. So they got rain yesterday, so they got a lot of holes to play there, and we will get to that particular site in just a moment. But let's kind of set it up by showing you what transpired, because yesterday essentially was a little over 700 players for 47 spots in a national championship. Let's start at Canoe Brook in the great state of New Jersey. Played over those two golf courses. In Summit, New Jersey, 4 qualified. James Nicklaus, who played college golf at Yale, played hockey. He was a safety on the football team his freshman year. He gets through. Chris Gotterup, who's from the state of New Jersey, went to Rutgers, then went off to Oklahoma. Roberto Diaz, Benjamin James, who's a great, wonderful amateur player, probably going to be a very good professional, from the University of Virginia. He's in as well. Duke University had 7 spots, shows you the depth of that field. Zach Boshu, who actually roomed with Victor Hovland in Oklahoma State. He did a wonderful interview with Matt Adams. When it was over, he got very emotional, talking about calling his wife, calling his dad. That's what yesterday was, and you see the balance of the guys who got through. One note about the Duke University site: Miles Russell and Webb Simpson are alternates 1 and 2. They have a reasonable chance to get into Oakmont. I expect both of them to be in Western Pennsylvania next week in hopes that they do get in. Emerald Dunes, that's the spot we were talking about in West Palm Beach. That is incomplete. There's some great stories there. Justin Hicks actually led the U.S. Open after day 1, shared it, shot 68 at Torrey Pines. That was the Tiger Rocco playoff. Frankie Harris, college golfer who's played at a couple different places. He's in good shape. Blades Brown, the young man from just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And then Luke Poulter. Again, like I said, those guys currently hold down the 4 spots, but there's a ton of holes to play. There are a number of very good players that have a chance to move up. Like I said, with more than 9, some have 12, 15 holes to play today, and the forecast there is not good. Meanwhile, on to Kinsale Golf and Fitness Club in Powell, Ohio. That was the spot with the density of tour players. Eric Van Rooyen was your medalist. Bud Colley, wouldn't surprise me if Bud Colley had a good week next week in the U.S. Open. Lonto Griffin, Justin Lauer, Harrison Ott. Cameron Young won a gangsome playoff. I've got more on that and the optics of that in a moment. So he plays his way through the Ontario, Canada spot. Also, a lot of guys with a lot of professional experience. Kevin Velo is somebody who has missed a ton of cuts this year. Doesn't matter. He's going to play in the U.S. Open next week. Nicholas Norgard, Matt Wallace, Torbjorn Olesen, Mark Hubbard, Victor Perez, Emiliano Grillo. One thing about that spot there in Canada, 7 spots, 5 different nations represented, including 2 from the United States and 2 from Denmark. How good is that? the Piedmont Driving Club. Mason Howell is finishing his junior year in high school. He shot 18 under yesterday. He only played 36 holes, for crying out loud. That's crazy. Jackson Buchanan also shot 18 under par. Tyler Weaver and Jackson Coyven, both those young men left the Piedmont Driving Club and are headed to Congaree. They're playing in the Palmer Cup. We will be there tomorrow. And there's Will Chandler. That's the final of the 5 qualifiers from the Piedmont Driving Club in Atlanta, Georgia, that also had the likes of KJ Choi and Zach Johnson. Moving on, as we get to the final spots, Springfield Country Club. Another late night there, Zach Blair in a marathon playoff. That was fascinating. More on that in a little bit. Grant Haefner is going to join us. Grant Haefner is somebody who has no status anywhere, so he's hopscotching all over the place, trying to make a check, keep the lights on, play professional golf. And we're going to talk about his story because he's going to join us here in less than 10 minutes. Valencia Country Club, they got to resolve who's going to be that final spot because they've got a playoff today between Lucas Carper and Joey Herrera for the final spot. Preston Summerhays is a uber-talented collegiate golfer from Arizona State. He gets on through. The Wine Valley Golf Club, we have our own Tim Watley of the U.S. Open. Matt Voigt is a dentist. I don't know if he has the same type of periodicals in his waiting room that Tim Watley did on Seinfeld. But that is a tremendous story. It's amazing. Oh, by the way, Matt Voigt caddied at Oakmont. You can't make this stuff up. Brady Calkins is the other qualifier. The Woodmont Country Club Rockville, Maryland spot also needed a playoff. Mark Leishman, by way of Live Golf, he gets through. Trevor Cohn, who's actually from Charlotte, played college golf at Virginia Tech. He's missed a ton of cuts this year, made his way onto the PGA Tour by way of the Korn Ferry Tour last year. So all these missed cuts by different guys like Kevin Velo, Trevor Cohn, who cares right now? Because they made their way into the U.S. Open. And why I said yesterday when we started this program, why I love yesterday, is that the essence of professional golf has kind of been not only built on, but leaned on the notion, premise, and principle of meritocracy. And certainly at the highest reaches of professional golf on the PGA Tour, some of that has been compromised because we have signature series events and we have smaller fields and we have no cuts and the best players are more insulated and there's less jeopardy. And where's the relegation and where's the opportunity? Yesterday was the opportunity, and even though it is only one solitary opportunity, it's so significant. That's why players who have done a lot at the college level, most of these players, were prodigies to some degree. They were great elite junior players. Most of them went off and played college golf at probably a mid to high to elite level. And then a number of them now play professional golf on various tours, some of them including the guys who played at Kinsale, which was the Columbus, Ohio site, because of the presence of the PGA Tour at the Memorial, that they always are going to have one, and actually two with the Springfield, Ohio site there as well. But consider the Kinsale site yesterday in Columbus, Ohio. When it was over, you had the likes of Cameron Young, who has been on a United States President's Cup team. You had Eric Cole, who we had on the program last week from Muirfield Village, who was the Rookie of the Year on the PGA Tour just a couple of years ago. And you had Max Homa, who in the last year, Max Homa has exhibited what golf can be: ebbs and flows, belief and doubt, running stride for stride at times, and him being so forthright and transparent and sharing, talking about that. And more recently, breaking with his longtime caddy, Joe Greiner. And the caddy that he had with him this past week at the Memorial Tournament, we didn't realize that they broke up. And that was one of the primary reasons why he was carrying his own bag yesterday. So here is Max Homa, a 6-time winner on the PGA Tour, a guy who's been on a President's Cup team, a Ryder Cup team, somebody who was in the deep end of the pool at the Masters a little bit over a year ago, carrying his own carry bag for 36 holes on a Monday wearing shorts. and he 3-putted the final hole, which would have avoided having to be into a playoff, and he doesn't make it through. But that Gangsom playoff was representative of something we don't see. We don't see days like yesterday, and I mean that knowing that the R&A and their final qualifying that they will conduct for the Open Championship will be similar, but we won't have the number of opportunities optically to watch that here in the United States, and they will not have as robust the coverage of all the final qualifying sites that they will have there as that we had here. That's the essence of it all. That these guys, as accomplished as they are, some of them probably getting on private jets to go to wherever they are going to next, wearing shorts, some wearing shorts, some wearing trousers, or slacks, as you may call them, trying to get through. And there's Zach Blair. And Zach Blair finds himself, and that was at the Springfield, Ohio site for that final spot, in what was also a Gangsom playoff in fading light after 8 o'clock in Springfield, Ohio, reducing it down to where when they eliminated everybody but just him and the guy that he was going up against, the guy he was going up against was an individual NCAA title holder from LSU, John Peterson, who I thought should have been on a United States Walker Cup team, and also has played in a U.S. Open before. And now he has got a garage door opening or garage door company. I don't know exactly what they do. They do the installation. He's trying to build a business. And here he is in a playoff on a Monday night to play in a national championship. That's the good stuff. Yes, the TV show that we watch every weekend, and it's glitzy and it's glamorous, and they hand out big fat checks. They don't even give out the big, really big checks anymore that you think like Happy Gilmore, you just throw in the back seat of your Eldorado and head on down the road to the next stop. We don't even get that anymore from the TV show. Yesterday was delicious. Yesterday was nourishing. And Emerald Dunes, they ain't even done yet. So we'll follow that today and see who makes it through. And is it the next generation of Poulter who's going to make his way onto the big stage of a national championship? We'll see. Or Blades Brown, who said, I'm going to forego college golf, and with my name and with my game, more importantly, I'm going to try to figure it out and get some status somewhere. Well, playing in a U.S. Open is a pretty good start. He has a chance. We're going to take a break. A guy who's got a chance, he's in the field. And his story is, to me, right out of central casting about what yesterday is all about. 47 spots, over 700 players scattered all over this country, from Walla Walla, Washington to Durham, North Carolina. Grant Haefner is through. We'll talk about his day yesterday and what he did when it was over, because it wasn't glamorous, I can promise you that. And at the bottom of the hour, Taylor Zarzour will join me. It's a Tuesday edition. It's 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel. And please listen, if you get in the car, it is Channel 92. It is Sirius XM's PGA Tour Radio. We're back with one of the dreamers right after this. Back in Tuesday edition of 5 Clubs Golf Channel, also on PGA Tour Radio. That's Channel 92 on Sirius XM. This segment brought to you by Peter Millar. When it comes to all the things you need a bathing suit this summer? They have the best selection imaginable. I'm not joking. They do, and they've got everything else in between, from sports coats to sportswear to anything you would wear on the golf course, to going to the gym, to walk into a boardroom. It's all I've worn very proudly for the last 15 years. It is Peter Millar. Speaking of being proud, I know his friends, his family, proud of what he accomplished yesterday. And that is Grant Haefner. He was the medalist in the Springfield, Ohio site for U.S. Open final qualifying. And when it was over, he didn't get on a private plane. He got in a car and he drove to what's next. And what's next is another golf event. He's joining me now from southern Indiana. And so, first of all, I say good morning. How much sleep did you get?
You know, I think maybe about 4 hours, 5 hours. It was tough to sleep. I got in about 11:30 p.m. last night, and my phone was still going off.
I bet it was. Let me ask you, before we get to the day and how you made your way to Oakmont, So you get in your car, I assume rental car?
No, I my own car.
Your own
I
car.
live in Bloomfield Hills. I live in Michigan during this time of year, and so Springfield, Ohio wasn't too far away.
Okay, so you went to Bloomfield Hills High School, Berkeley, Michigan. You went to Wright State. You then did a grad year, I believe, at Jacksonville University. So you're in your own car. So you're driving. Are you on the phone with friends? Are you listening to music? What did you do? Because your adrenaline had to be just pumping as you're headed south to your next destination. What did you do on that car ride?
Yeah, I was on the phone for probably all 3 hours of it. Whether it was my dad, trying to figure out logistics for next week, having some sponsors call me, discussing things, mainly a lot of friends and family, and just talking about how proud they are of me, and how much they look forward to being out there next week at Oakmont.
I know they all are. When you were done yesterday, I was saying to you during the break, I was very taken by, just how raw and how powerfully emotional you were about the accomplishment. Take people through the day and managing energy, and what level of awareness you had in terms of, you getting off to a good start. And obviously you're in the mix. What was the day like from the beginning in terms of managing energy, and then take me through the latter stages of that final 9 holes in the second round?
Yeah, it was an interesting day. I knew I'd been playing well going into it. And so my caddy and our strategy was, just try to give ourselves as many opportunities. The golf course is pretty difficult when it comes to the green complexes, so play conservative when need be. But my real mentality was, I put my phone away, I turned it off, put it in the bag. I didn't look at it till it was over. And my mentality was, there are a lot of good players in this field. For example, Brent Snedeker was there. He just shot 7 under the final round of the Memorial Tournament and made $600,000. And there's Zach Blair and, David Lipsky, just some really, really quality players. So I just thought to myself, whatever I'm doing today is not good enough. These guys are way better than me. I'm gonna try to keep the pedal down and kind of stay in the moment, and kind of have the mentality of, I'm kind of chasing all day. And then, I was able to stay in that, that kind of state. And on the 36th hole, I just had to know. I asked the gentleman in my group, Angelo, when I got to the final green, I said, where do I stand? And he said, you're leading by 1. And I had no idea. Wow.
Grant, when you said stay in that state, it's one thing to try to do that over the course of 18 holes of competition. This is 36 holes. The challenge of staying in that state, particularly late, do you have anything that you do to be able to try to stay in that state? Because it's one of those things where the more conscious you are of it, the less likely you are to stay in it. So what were you doing to just be as present about the next shot as possible?
It was funny. I didn't realize at the time, but a mentor of mine back at our club in Michigan, who had texted the gentleman caddying for me, because the gentleman caddying for me, Brady, wondered where we were. And the guy, texted him saying, don't worry about it, grind to the parking lot. And he started saying that, around the 12th hole or 13th hole. And just funny enough, it just made me really stay in the present. I didn't want to look at my phone. I didn't want to know where I stood. And, just by him kind of saying that. And so I said, you know what? Yeah, we're going to grind to her in that parking lot.
The what's next? You know where you're going. You're going to play in the U.S. Open. Give people an idea of your path. You were you were a very good student in college. Obviously, you're a good player. You think you can do this. In terms of, you said you were also playing well. Playing minor league golf, how challenging can that be to your belief system? Or do you just focus on you and getting better and not look around at where it is that you're playing? How do you do that? How do you be in a mental state where your belief system is high, whereas when you look around, there's a modesty to it?
Yeah, I think it kind of comes from my background a little bit. I played as a kid. My dad taught me the game a little bit, but I played other sports. I played soccer, I played tennis, and I got injured. And finally around when I was about 15, 16 years old is when I really picked up the golf clubs and had to kind of, beg my way onto a college team, a Division II school in Detroit called Wayne State University. And then with some COVID eligibility, I ended up going to Jacksonville University. And so I felt like I've got a late start. And when I look around at a field of all these competitors, they started way before me. You were talking about the prodigies of the game. And, I think I'm only in, I say maybe year 12 of playing this game. And so when I look at it that way, it kind of, gives me a sense of, I don't know if you say hope or belief in myself of, I can do this because I haven't been doing this since I was 3. And, I think it's really grounded in that.
So when you leave yesterday, you drive 3.5 hours, almost 4 hours, because you're on to your next competition. Explain to people where you are today.
Yeah, today I'm in Henryville, Indiana, which is just north of Louisville, and I'm going to be teeing up in America's Tour qualification school. And as we were saying, not many people know what that may be. So the America's Tour is the feeder tour for the Korn Ferry, and then, Korn Ferry to PGA Tour. And this week I have a 4-day competition, 72 holes over the next 4 days to hopefully gain status for the North America swing.
So the next 4 days is competitive golf, which means that you are going to play all the way up into when you're going to embark to get to Oakmont. How much have you, like you said at the beginning of this conversation, on the phone, logistics, talking to family, letting them essentially execute all the things that need to be done as far as accommodations? Your plan is to get to Oakmont, what, Sunday at some point?
Yeah, my plan is to get there about Sunday afternoon. I've already been on the phone with my swing instructor and my putting coach just now, and they're getting in on Sunday. So fortunately, the team around me is going to handle a lot of logistics for everyone, so I can just focus on golf this week. I still got 4 more days left. I know next week's going to be exciting, but for me, job's not done this week.
Last thing for you, one of the things I think is so neat about players like yourself experiencing something like this is the enormity of it all, but that also can be exhausting because there's so much you're looking at and you want to stay very present, very focused, even though it's all about preparation. Are you going to take a little time to drink it all in? Because this is a special, special thing.
Yeah, I think this evening I'll take a moment around dinner time. I'm staying at an Airbnb of some good friends who all are chasing the same thing, and I think we'll take a moment and kind of celebrate together. And I'm looking forward to that. Some of them had early tee time, so they were out this morning, so I haven't seen them yet. But I look forward to that this evening.
Before you and I started, and this is another example, and only the latest, and there'll be many, many more, certainly in your journey and hopefully in mine. Golf's a connector. You mentioned, hey, I think you know Bruce Davidson, and I'll be with Bruce tomorrow at Congaree. You've spent some time there. The Palmer Cup is there. The game brings people together and people who are advocates for you. So even though you got to do this alone, I know that you have a lot of people who have great belief in you that you can rely on. And I know that that emotion got to you because it isn't just for you. It's for all these people who have believed in you. Enjoy all of this while you try to focus and do the best you can next week at a U.S. Open. Thank you for getting up, doing this, and I look forward to seeing you next week in Pittsburgh.
Thank you very much for your time. Happy to do it.
Thank you. That's Grant Haefner. And again, like he said, a lot of good players there, guys who are not only have some status, who are tour members, including Zach Blair, who was the last guy in that marathon playoff. We're going to take a break. Taylor Zarzour. He is the host of The Starter on SiriusXM, which precedes us, starting at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. He joins me. His reaction to what he saw yesterday, storylines headed to Oakmont beyond the stories we saw yesterday, and what of Scheffler as we continue with you, approaching the bottom of the hour here. It is a Tuesday edition of 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel and on Channel 92, SiriusXM's PGA Tour Radio. Back with Taylor right after this. Back in on this Tuesday, it is 5 Clubs. In this segment brought to you by the Cradle of American Golf. It is Pinehurst, those cottages at number 8. Book them. They're available. Also, that new clubhouse at number 10 and the restaurant, that's coming soon enough as well. The last time I went to Pinehurst, I went through the World Golf Hall of Fame, went to the Carolina Hotel, and just walked around because that's how fun going to Pinehurst is. And you know who I did it with? The guy sitting to my left, Taylor Zarzour, the host of The Starter on Sirius XM's Channel 92, preceding us. Good morning. Thank you for driving over.
I love that new clubhouse. Yeah, and we're going to have a course number 11 coming up right next to it.
We are indeed. You get romantic about this stuff like I do. And Monday, there's a lot of good about Monday. Why is Monday in golf such a valuable day?
We have talked a lot in the last few years about all the money that is infiltrated through the game of golf, through the game of professional golf, and how big of a turnoff that has been. That because there is something about the game that, at least the highest level of competitive golf, that transcends the sport, where it's not about finances. It's not about how much money you're playing for. It's about the meaning behind what you're playing for, chasing history, playing against time, if you will. Monday, the final qualifying on Monday for the U.S. Open has a feeling, it has a, I'm trying to find the right word. It has nothing to do with money, and it has everything to, it's the purest form of the sport is really what it is. And the fact that you see 4 guys that are ranked in the top 100 in the world, that are, one of which is carrying his bag, and they're playing for a 5-for-1 playoff to get into the U.S. Open. And that's what the sport is all about. That's what turned almost all of us on to the game of golf. And I just so applaud this network, Golf Channel, and Sirius XM, but especially Golf Channel, for what they've done to celebrate this in recent years and turn it into appointment viewing. I think it's one of the best days that Golf Channel has all year. Maybe it's only missing Steve Kornacki at a touch screen. Maybe it's only missing.
Do we really need him? It's not that complicated.
Can we have Steve Sands and a dry erase board come back?
That would
I love
be nostalgic.
Rich Lerner hosting, it feels big. Brendan DeYoung stole somebody's suit and wore it. I mean, it's a big day.
Whose suit did he steal?
It's not
Matt
his.
Foley?
It's sources close to Brendan, mustachioed sources close to Brendan tell me it was not his suit.
Okay, that is now the cherry on top of the whole day. And it wasn't even his suit.
No, I don't think he has a sport coat.
No, he's got to have one from the President's Cup, doesn't he? Don't they issue you at least one sport coat?
But Brendan,
tuxedo?
He crushed it. Damon, George, Tripp, the whole crew. I just love what they do there. Even a shout out to Eamon on site at Oakmont.
Sure.
And I love the celebration they were having there at Oakmont to get ready for next week. It does. It feels like one of the biggest days in golf. And the fact that you have all these different sites that you're going to, and you've got dentists and major champions and guys that can't make the Korn Ferry Tour and guys that just competed in Muirfield, all together trying to get to the U.S. Open. I just think it's so special.
Yeah, it was interesting. Eamon did some really neat interviews. I thought his interview with Scott Langley was terrific.
Yeah, it was
long, and it was talking about like his own journey. I mean, he played professional golf. He got to the tour. Meanwhile, behind him, there is this hoity-toity little get-together, and if you're looking close,
was great.
Going, okay,
I know him.
I know him. That's the inner sanctum of golf.
Yeah.
That's everybody who runs golf.
A lot of SWAT winners that were behind him.
You are correct. If you look in 2006, you'd find my name there.
And yes, 2016.
Nice.
Yes.
The other thing about yesterday, back to what you said about that 5-for-1, is that it reminds us of things that we experience, not 5-for-1s to get into a U.S. Open, but 5-for-1 to get on the traveling interclub team.
Yes.
5-for-1 to be the 4th guy on the high school team that's going to play in districts. Those things are things that connect you
Yes.
to the best players in the world. What does not connect you is the idea of them finishing fourth in a signature series event and making 875. I don't begrudge them, but there's no identification with that.
Gary, I think there's demand for this. I think that your guest yesterday, Ryan French, who's done such a great job on social media in recent years of talking about the importance of Monday and these qualifiers to get into PGA Tour events, I think there is demand for these 5-for-1s or 9-for-3 playoffs. The U.S. Amateur every year after stroke play, you get it down to 64 players to get to match play. Almost certainly you're going to have a 12-for-5 playoff to get into that match play. I think that people love that. And I've said this for years. I know you laugh at some of my crazy ideas. Here's another one. Instead of the top 60 in ties or the top 65 in ties or top 70 in ties at the RBC Canadian Open this week, Saturday morning, play it off to get to 70. There would be demand for that if you had 6-for-2 playing off on Saturday morning to get into the third round of the RBC Canadian Open. I love those events.
You know, as we just let's just take this a little bit further, whether it be there or whether it be the signature series events that you look at. And again, you can't do this every week because they're not going to sign up for it. Max Homa's not going to carry his bag for 36 holes, 5 or 6 times a year. But since we have a couple of the signature series events that have this modest cut associated with it, including Jacks, Arnolds, and Tigers, the idea of if you really want to say there's some jeopardy, and it's not like jeopardy, they can't keep the lights on, people, if you show them things that are relatable, like 5-for-1, 6-for-2, to get to the weekend and make it a hard number, not 50 in ties, it's 50.
Exactly.
It's 50.
I would love it.
That's where, whether it's SSG, whether it's, trying to understand if we're going to have now this for-profit arm of the PGA Tour, how do we make the product better? Walk and talks. And by the way, what did you think of Jack saying? That was horrible. I would never do that.
I love it.
I loved it too. I loved it too. Days like yesterday can be educational and they can be instructive.
Yeah, well, it's because it has an identity. That day yesterday has an identity. And there are a couple of days in certain PGA Tour events that are searching for an identity. I love that the PGA Tour just did this fan forward initiative and they asked 50,000 plus fans what they think. And Commissioner Monahan has been public about one of the things the fans like is a cut. Well, Friday has an identity on the PGA Tour. This Friday will have an identity. There's no question that some big name or a few will be trying to get into Saturday at the RBC Canadian Open. If you did something with that on Friday and Saturday at the biggest events, and all of a sudden Scottie Scheffler, that doesn't seem realistic, Rory McIlroy, Xander Schauffele, or someone else is trying to make a birdie to get into the weekend, or they're in some 5-for-2 playoff. Remember the Olympic bronze medal playoff? How great was that?
It's a great trivia question.
It's one of, you're right. I mean, that is the thing I love most about final qualifying at the U.S. Open is what we saw in Ohio with that 5-for-1 playoff yesterday with 4 top 100 players playing and 1 carrying their bag. That just makes it so special. Zach Blair, who looks like he's on his 8th different putting grip, trying to beat the Gator man, John Peterson, to get into the U.S. Open.
Garage doors?
He's selling garage doors now. Last night in Valencia, California, which that's going to start back up here in a little while, you have a guy that misses a 5-6 footer, and he has to sleep on that all night. And today, that 2-for-1 playoff continues. Give me more of this. I love it.
Yeah, I think there are elements as you start looking at FedEx Cup playoffs and how to advance and ways to make it to where that you would have not a guarantee, but a likelihood of maybe having a playoff to advance from the first playoff event to the next. Ooh. And then obviously the finality of the Tour Championship. You mentioned Scheffler. Let me get your thoughts on how much it seems like things have changed since Rory crossed the line at Augusta National. It was exhausting, it was euphoric, it was ecstatic, and all of those things. And since then, the other guy, who nobody ever questioned he was the best player in the world, has answered back in such an emphatic way that I wonder, oh my, what are we watching now for the balance of the year?
We left the Masters and we said Rory McIlroy unequivocally is the player of the year in golf. And all of a sudden we're getting ready for the U.S. Open and he isn't. Scottie Scheffler, I would give the edge to over Rory McIlroy, given how brilliant of a performance he has had since that Masters ended.
Let me stop you there. And just for people who are going, wait a second, Masters players in a Signature Series event over another major, a Signature Series event in the CJ Cup Nelson, but there's more to it.
There's more to it. There's constant top 10s surrounding those three.
Lives in the top 5s.
Lives there. And now all of a sudden we're looking at him and we are saying, okay, in the last 40 plus years, other than Tiger Woods, no one has had a run like this. 4+ year run like this where they've dominated the sport and, like you just said, lives in the top 5, lives in the top 10, wins at least a handful of tournaments each year. We haven't seen it. You could go back to Tom Watson in the late 70s, early 80s and say that's the last time someone not named Tiger Woods did something like this. 40 plus years, Gary. Greg Norman, Vijay Singh, David Duvall, Nick Faldo, Rory McIlroy, you name it, Dustin Johnson, none of those guys every single week did what Scottie Scheffler is doing. Brooks Koepka's won 5 major championships. He never lived in the top 5 or top 10.
No.
You know, I mean, Scottie Scheffler does this every single week. This is historic what we're watching.
It is. I was saying yesterday, Phil's 45 wins is one of the great achievements ever. Never had a 5-win season. Weirdly, Dustin Johnson, again, he was so consistently good. Do I think that there were a couple of years, 2020, because of COVID, it was abbreviated. He won 4 times that year. He had another season where he won 4. He never had a 5-win season. Scottie looks like he's going to have at least 5 wins. He had 7 last year. Tiger had 10 5-win seasons. It is historic. So now we go to Oakmont, and I'm not ready to go Scheffler Field kind of thing, but this is such a shift to where I think that he is, if you want to say he's 3-1, 4-1 because of how difficult the golf course is, he is the favorite by a margin, is he not?
More than double, at least in terms. You just talked about the odds.
Yes.
He's 3-1.
Yeah.
Okay, and the next guy, Rory, in some places is 8-1.
Yeah.
So he is more than double the favorite, and justifiably so. I would say just take the odds out of it. Just look at the eye test, and I would say going into the U.S. Open, he's as big a favorite as we have had in 20 plus years. I think you have to go back to 2002.
In this event.
Yes.
Okay.
And you have to go back to 2002, 2003, that era, and when Tiger Woods was that big of a favorite, and we were playing that Tiger versus the field game. I think you have to go back to then to find the last time somebody was this big of a favorite going into the U.S. Open, if not all the major championships. Gary, I could go to, as an example, Portrush. I wouldn't make Scottie as big a favorite there as I would here.
That's fair.
The elements, the bumps, the bounces, there's a lot of other things that you have to consider at an Open Championship overseas in Europe.
And that is his one modest, and I say that relatively speaking, in terms of the things that he's done in that major to the other 3.
I think that one evens the playing field and allows more people to win than the others do.
There's more vagaries to it.
Yeah. This one, I mean, I'm not saying it's Muirfield, but what he just did is what he needs to do in order to win the U.S. Open.
Drove it great when he needed to drive it great.
And he putted fine. He put it in play. He put it on the correct side of the green. When he didn't, he was the best. He was the best chipping the golf ball in the entire field.
And he's number 1 in scrambling for the season. The other thing, which is required more so at the U.S. Open than I think the other 3, is minimize damage and be a salvation expert. Nobody's better at that. He exhibited that at the PGA. He did it again at Muirfield Village, that his 73s are 71s. And that gives him not margin, but it gives him something that the other players are incapable of doing. Let's take a break. We come back. More to get to. With Taylor Zarzour being with me in studio here on this Tuesday. Back on 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel. And also, it is Channel 92. It is PGA Tour Radio. His show precedes us. He's on every day of the week. 3 days is enough. It's exhausting. I need Thursday and Friday off. We're back with Taylor right after this. We are back in on this Tuesday. It is 5 Clubs Golf Channel. Also on PGA Tour Radio, it is Sirius XM. This segment brought to you by Golf Pride when it comes to trusting your grips. Every player at every level, including the best in the world, trusts Golf Pride more than any other grip offering anywhere in the world. Guy who trusts them, not officially, but he uses them, is Rory McIlroy. He is back this week playing in an event that has been very good to him. And by the way, a new season of Ask Rory available on Golf Pass. And so if you're already a member, you're going, all right, a new season of Ask Rory. I was lucky enough to share the day with him, was posing all the questions to him, not only from a lot of subscribers, but also we had a couple people join us on property there, including that young man who was able to ask a question of Rory. This is a lot of wonderful content that Rory has been doing now. This is season 5 of Ask Rory. So all the subscribers of Golf Pass, you now have it available to you, and it is literally, just think about any shot that you would see him possibly try to execute over the course of a competitive round. He takes it on in what was a full day of content captures. So it's great to do that. It is now available officially. It is Ask Rory Season 5 on Golf Pass. All right, you've been around him a lot. Yeah. The last time we saw him play, kind of ordinary golf. You weren't particularly surprised by the performance because you and I both thought, it's a lot. It's a lot to try to ascend again so soon after. And then he didn't speak, and everybody had their thoughts on that. What does your intuition tell you about this week?
You and I were live on Sirius XM, and you tossed it to me to do an interview with him, and I don't think he's done another interview since.
That's correct.
And the first question I asked him was, instead of asking you about how you're going to reset after heartbreak, how are you going to reset after the biggest professional moment you've ever had? And he was sort of searching for an answer, it felt like, as he said, I'm trying to go through that right now and reset myself on what I'm focusing on next and what goals I want to achieve in the game. There's no question he wanted to win the PGA Championship. He loves Quail Hollow. He wanted to try to win the calendar Grand Slam. And I think there was a lot of disappointment in his performance and how he couldn't get himself back to the top of the leaderboard in that event. I think you're going to see a guy that is focused come to Canada, that wants to compete against Scottie Scheffler and put himself right there in the fight. I think he wants to give us a Scottie versus Rory moment at some point this year. So I imagine that he will be focused when we see him. I think it's disappointing if he feels like he was wronged at all about this driver situation, because again, I don't understand why he feels like anyone else thinks he did anything wrong. He didn't.
No.
Scottie Scheffler didn't do anything wrong.
Anyone that
had a non-conforming driver didn't do anything wrong. There's a real chance you and I might have a non-conforming driver. We've hit it thousands and thousands of times. It's going to eventually not be allowed to be used in competitive play when you swing as hard as he does. I don't know if that was in his head when he was in Charlotte, and I'm sure he'll be
the latter part of the week.
Maybe he'll be asked about it when he's in Canada.
Gotta believe he might.
But I do think you're going to see a guy that has spent the last couple of weeks resetting. I know he did a lot of traveling. I think now it's time to try to compete at the top of the game again.
Yeah, I think that Scottie Scheffler did what great players do, is that he answered back to somebody who got off to a better start, and all the reasons that you can lend to why that happened doesn't matter. I love when greats respond to the other greats, and Scheffler has now done that. And it gets back to what Rory said at the beginning of the year and how he found inspiration, not only in Scottie's performance, but the methodology with which he went around doing what he did. And it was on display at Pebble Beach. Didn't live on driver, point to point, same at the Players. The evolution of Rory. And I hope that that's the case, because one thing I do believe is that Bryson DeChambeau is absolutely going to be a part of the tapestry, which will be Oakmont, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, he's practicing at the White House on the front lawn, hitting shots to get ready for Oakmont. I mean, it's unbelievable seeing some of the pictures from yesterday when he was there with President Trump, and they've created a green for him there to get ready for Oakmont. Yes, I do expect him to be a factor. If you take out the Open Championship, he's been a factor in all the other majors, the American majors. The last few years, he's been a top 10 machine and obviously won last year's U.S. Open, so it wouldn't surprise me. I think the difference between Bryson, Rory, and Scottie right now, Gary, Scottie's not playing against Bryson and Rory. Scottie is playing his own game in his own lane, and he's only focused on what he can do best. It's really hard for the rest of the world to do that.
No doubt about it. All right, so tomorrow we will be at Congaree Golf Club, the Arnold Palmer Cup, and we will be joined by Eamon Lynch, Brandel Chambly, Paul McGinley, Ludwig Oberg, players in this wonderful competition as well. It's going to be a great day. Thank you. It's great to see you. Can't wait to be with you at Oakmont. For all of us here on 5 Club, see you tomorrow from Congaree Golf Club and the Arnold Palmer Cup.